It was the kind of morning that felt too quiet to be real. No birds. No breeze. Just a slow dawn creeping over Brentwood. The kind of stillness that only exists right before the world is about to change forever. Arnold Schwarzenegger had just finished his morning espresso, half full, as always, when the message came through. It lit up the screen of his phone with a dim glow, barely cutting through the shadows in his study. A text. Short. Blunt. Merciless in its finality. Hogan passed. 71. Cardiac arrest. He stared at the words. His thumb hovered over the screen, trembling slightly. Not because of age, but because of the gravity behind those syllables. It didn't feel real. Couldn't be real. Hogan, dead? No. Not him. Not the immortal one. Not the man who slammed giants and stood taller than myth itself. And yet, the words didn't go away. They just sat there. Cold. Unfeeling. Final. Arnold didn't reply. He didn't forward the message. He didn't speak. He simply set the phone down on the edge of his massive oak desk and leaned back in his leather chair. A deep silence fell over the room, a silence so heavy it nearly choked the air. Outside, the orange-pink hue of sunrise began to bleed through the curtains. But Arnold didn't move to open them. The world outside might have been waking up. But inside this room, something had just died. A part of history. A part of him. Gone. For a long moment, he just sat there, eyes fixed on nothing. His mind didn't race. It wandered, backward. Back to a different time. A louder time. A time of arena lights and flexing muscles and adrenaline that pumped harder than blood. Back to the 80s. When the world was a different place and muscle was seen as a gimmick. When charisma was laughed at. When no one believed a man could walk into a room and command attention with nothing but presence. That's what they were. Two muscle-bound juggernauts who didn't fit anywhere until they broke the walls down themselves. They weren't just friends. They weren't just entertainers. They were icons. And now, only one of them remained. Arnold slowly stood up and walked across the room toward a framed photo that hung by the mantel. The wood floors creaked beneath him, a sound far too human, far too mortal for the man who had once been called a machine. The photo was from 1991. WrestleMania weekend. Arnold in a black leather jacket, Hogan in full red and yellow ring gear. Both pointing to the camera. Both grinning like brothers who had just conquered the world. And in a way, they had. Backstage, they had shared more than laughs. They had shared ideology. Be larger than life. Or be forgotten. They didn't choose the times. But they defined them. Now, staring at that photograph, Arnold's hand slowly raised and touched the glass. It shook. Slightly. Was it grief? Or was it the sudden realization that even titans could fall? I thought you'd outlive me, he muttered. No cameras. No script. No director's cue. Just Arnold. Whispering to the memory of a man who had never known how to quit. He stayed in that position for what felt like forever. His phone buzzed again. Dozens of messages now. Some from friends. Some from reporters. Some from former colleagues. But he didn't answer any of them. Not yet. Because grief, real grief, takes time. And this wasn't the passing of just any man. This was Hulk Hogan. The force of nature who turned the squared circle into a cathedral of spectacle. The man who made leg drops feel like thunder and ripped shirts like he was tearing apart the fabric of reality. He was more than a wrestler. He was an era. He was the era. And now, that era had ended. By the time Arnold emerged from his study, the news had broken. The world was waking up to the shock. Wrestling legend Hulk Hogan dies at 71. The headline flashed across every network. CNN. Fox. TMZ, ESPN. Even non-sports outlets carried it on their tickers. Social media erupted. Celebrities, athletes, politicians. They all paid tribute. But Arnold said nothing. Not publicly. Not yet. He remained quiet. Watching. Reading. Processing. Because words weren't easy right now. And besides, what could you possibly say? How do you sum up the life of a man who wasn't just in the spotlight, but was the spotlight? How do you eulogize someone who turned crowd noise into an art form? Who turned entrance music into a battle cry? How do you say goodbye to someone who never left? It wasn't until late that night, long after the headlines had begun to blur and the trending hashtags reached their inevitable peak, that Arnold finally wrote something. Just one paragraph. No publicist. No ghostwriter. Just him. Typed on the same computer where he once wrote campaign speeches and scripts. He was a true icon. A friend. A force. The world knew Hulk Hogan as the greatest to ever step into the ring, but I knew him as something more. He was kind. He was real. And he always showed up for people when they needed him most. The world lost a giant today. I lost a brother. That was it. No more. No less. Because for Arnold, simplicity had weight. And in those few sentences, was a lifetime. He didn't tweet it. He didn't post it on Instagram. He sent it to Hogan's family first. Only after their approval did it make its way to the press. And when it did, it broke the internet all over again. Fans reposted it. Commentators read it aloud on television. Wrestlers printed it and taped it to their lockers. Because it didn't sound like a eulogy. It sounded like truth. And sometimes, that's all grief needs. In the days that followed, the world continued to mourn. Vince McMahon called it the end of an era. Triple H said, he made us all believe. Even The Rock, who once electrified a stadium in a legendary showdown with Hogan, posted a video in tears. There will never be another, he said. Not in our lifetime. Not in any lifetime. But still, Arnold remained mostly silent. Until the funeral. The funeral wasn't a spectacle. It wasn't open to the public. There were no lights. No cameras. No dramatic entrances or pyrotechnics. This wasn't WrestleMania. This wasn't the WWE Hall of Fame. This wasn't about legend. This was about the man. Terry Bollea. And Hulk Hogan, for once in his life, wasn't expected to perform. He was being laid to rest. Arnold arrived early. He didn't bring an entourage. No stylists. No photographers. Just himself. Dressed in a dark tailored suit, sunglasses over weary eyes, not to hide who he was, but to shield what he couldn't contain. He walked into the small Clearwater chapel like a soldier reporting for duty. His stride, still powerful. His shoulders, still wide. But the fire that once powered the Terminator, the Governor, the immortal friend, had dimmed. Because this wasn't just a farewell. This was a fracture. And as he took his seat in the front row, he didn't look around the room. He looked forward. At the casket. At the place where a voice once echoed. Where a presence once lit entire arenas. And now, only silence remained. The ceremony was private. Hand-picked guests. No stage, no platform. Just those who knew Terry. The man behind the sunglasses and 24-inch pythons. Family. Old friends. A few trusted names from the road. And Arnold. When the service began, no one moved. The priest didn't read from a prepared speech. Instead, he simply said, if you're here today, it's because you saw him. Really saw him. And for the next hour, they did. They saw him in stories never told. Like the time he showed up, unannounced, to a children's hospital just days after undergoing surgery. Like the time he personally paid the rent of a former tag partner who had fallen on hard times and never told a soul. Like the time he flew across the country to stand beside a kid whose make-a-wish was to meet the Terminator, but Arnold had been out of town. So Hogan showed up instead. Full gear. Full heart. And never asked for credit. That was the man Arnold remembered. Not the headline. The human. The one who listened after Arnold lost his father. Who didn't offer advice or platitudes. Just sat beside him in silence, understanding that presence was more powerful than words. As these memories spilled out in hushed tones, Arnold remained silent. He didn't speak. Not yet. He just listened. To laughter wrapped in tears. To voices that cracked under the weight of what was no longer there. And then, slowly, he rose. The room went quiet. He stepped to the front, not as a former governor, not as a box office legend, not as the strongest man in bodybuilding history. Just as a friend. He placed one hand on the casket, his fingers splayed like roots against the polished wood. And then, a whisper. One only those closest could hear. "Thank you, brother. I'll carry your fire." 7 words. That was the goodbye. That was everything. When the service ended, people gathered outside beneath the Florida sun, shielding their eyes not just from the light, but from emotion. Ric Flair hugged Brooke Hogan, whispering something that made her nod through her tears. John Cena stood off to the side, head bowed, his silence saying more than any promo ever could. Dwayne Johnson arrived late, but no one minded. He made his way directly to Arnold, and the two men embraced. No words exchanged. Just a hand clasped tightly on a shoulder, and a nod of mutual understanding between titans. Inside WWE headquarters, the reaction had been immediate and profound. Executives paused meetings. Production teams stopped cutting promos. Staff gathered in hallways, quietly processing the weight of what had happened. Triple H, the new creative commander of the company, locked himself in his office. On the wall hung a faded photo, him and Hogan, sweaty after a segment in 2002. Triple H hadn't looked at it in years. Now, it was the only thing he could look at. When he finally emerged, he gathered the team and said only this: "Everything we are, began with him." Plans for Monday Night Raw changed instantly. No more hype packages. No more championship promo spots. This was going to be a tribute. And not just a WWE one. A Universal one. The show opened with silence. No fireworks. No commentary. Just the roster. All of them. Shoulder to shoulder on the stage. Roman Reigns. Seth Rollins. Becky Lynch. Cody Rhodes. Kevin Owens. Sami Zayn. Bayley. All in black. All solemn. A 10-bell salute. Each toll hit like thunder rolling through a church. Each pause between echoed longer than the last. Backstage, the mood was unlike anything in recent history. No one rehearsed. No one filmed promos. They sat together, sometimes in silence, sometimes in stories. Roman Reigns, stoic as ever, recalled how Hogan used to ruffle his hair as a kid. "He always called me Little Chief," Roman said softly. "Said I'd rule the ring one day." Seth Rollins admitted he used to mimic Hogan's pose in the mirror before school. His first wrestling memory wasn't even a match. It was Hogan's entrance. The energy. The connection. The madness of the crowd. He didn't just control the crowd, Seth said. He was the crowd. Even superstars who had never met Hogan felt the magnitude. They'd grown up watching grainy VHS tapes, bootleg DVDs, YouTube clips, the network. They had grown up watching him build the business they now lived in. Edge, currently out recovering from injury, called in a video message from home. Hogan didn't just make wrestling cool. He made it matter. He made it larger than life. And for so many of us, he made it personal. In NXT, the youngest class of WWE's developmental brand held their own vigil. In the training ring, they circled up and shared what Hogan had meant to them. "I'm only here because of him," one young wrestler said. "My dad used to tell me that real strength wasn't in your body, it was in how you made people feel. Hogan made me feel like I could be anything." And all of it, every tear, every story, every tribute, flowed into one single broadcast. WWE produced a full-hour special, Still Immortal, The Legacy of Hulk Hogan. It aired commercial-free. And it ended, with Arnold. The screen faded to black. Then, slowly, it lit up again. WWE's official tribute began not with a roar, but with a whisper. A single image. Hulk Hogan. Standing tall. Backlit. A spotlight behind him cutting through the darkness like a sword of memory. His silhouette clear, arms raised, mustache proud, muscles flexed, like a living statue. And beneath that image, a name. Terry Bollea. 1953 to 2025. Then, the words, "Still Immortal." No music. No voiceover. Just the image. Just the silence. And then, a heartbeat. Low. Faint. Rhythmic. Boom. 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 It matched the cadence of a crowd. The roar began to build, not from audio. From memory. From nostalgia. Then came the video. The greatest hits of an era. WrestleMania 3. The slam heard around the world. Andre the Giant crashing to the mat like a felled mountain. WrestleMania X8. Hogan vs. The Rock. Two generations colliding under 68,000 screaming fans. The promos. The poses. The entrances. Real American blaring over packed arenas. Children waving foam fingers. Adults screaming themselves hoarse. The red and yellow storm that had swept across 3 decades of sports entertainment. But it wasn't just the highlights. There were moments. Private ones. Clips of Hogan backstage. Laughing with crew members. Hugging Make-A-Wish kids. Thanking security guards after a show. Giving a speech to the WWE locker room that no one had seen before. One where he said, "The spotlight may fade, but the light you carry? That's forever." Then came the closing segment. It cut to black again. This time, a new spotlight formed. Arnold Schwarzenegger sat alone on a stool. No background. Just him. Lit from above. No script. No retakes. Just truth. He looked directly into the lens, his eyes worn but firm. And he began. "The first time I met Hulk, I thought, who is this maniac? Blonde hair. Muscles everywhere. Voice like a lion. I thought he was a cartoon." He chuckled lightly, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. But then I saw what he did. To rooms. To arenas. To people. Arnold leaned forward slightly. I watched men twice his size shrink in his presence. I watched children light up like Christmas trees when he walked into a room. I saw the way he turned wrestling into something global. Into something noble. He paused. We had our laughs. Our stories. Our workouts. But what people didn't see was his heart. A short clip played, a moment from the 80s. Arnold and Hogan training together. Hogan trying to bench press while Arnold laughed and yelled, "You call that power, brother? Come on." Back to Arnold's face. I watched him carry the weight of a generation. I watched him hurt. I watched him heal others when he couldn't heal himself. His voice grew softer. He was my friend. My brother. And I will never, ever forget the light he brought to this world. The camera pushed in slowly. "And I'll make you a promise, Hulk," your story doesn't end here. He paused. Then spoke the last words, deliberately. You body slammed the world. Now rest, my friend. We'll carry the torch. Fade to black. Then, one last shot. The ring. Empty. In the middle, a red and yellow boa and a single rose. The lights dimmed. The camera pulled back. And the screen faded out. Across the world, silence fell again. But this time, it wasn't grief. It was gratitude. In Clearwater Beach, fans gathered outside Hogan's store. Thousands of candles lit the pavement. Some fans wept. Others told stories. A few simply stood still, head bowed, lips moving in silent prayer. A local radio station played Real American every hour on the hour for 24 hours straight. In Chicago, a mural appeared overnight. Hogan, arms raised, surrounded by children dressed as superheroes. In Brazil, a man with a faded Hogan tattoo gathered his friends in a small shack and played WrestleMania V on a battered old television. This was our childhood, he told a camera crew. This was hope. In Japan, NJPW aired a special tribute before their main event. The crowd stood and chanted his name in perfect rhythm. Hogan. Hogan. And in Los Angeles, Muscle Beach became a temple. Bodybuilders gathered. Wore red and yellow. Lifted in silence. Then flexed to the heavens. It was no longer mourning. It was ritual. A global recognition of what Hogan had truly been, not just a wrestler. Not just a character. But a language. A symbol. One that transcended borders, ages, and even truth itself. Because Hogan didn't just exist in the world. He lived in stories. And the stories were alive. Online, the tributes didn't stop. Fans posted childhood photos wearing ripped tank tops, posing like their hero in the backyard. Old VHS tapes resurfaced, uploaded, reshared. WWE Network saw a surge in views, Hogan's matches dominating the trending charts. Kids who had never seen him wrestle live were suddenly binge-watching WrestleMania 3. Royal Rumble 1990. SummerSlam 1989. I didn't grow up with him, one teenage fan posted. But after tonight, I understand why my dad cried. And in a quiet home in Brentwood, Arnold saw that post. And smiled. Because that was legacy. Not in gold belts or main events. But in impact. In echo. In a world still whispering his name. Arnold returned to his daily routine eventually. Gym. Calls. Meetings. But something lingered. Every morning, before he left his house, he passed the photograph again. The one from WrestleMania weekend. And he whispered the same thing every day. Still immortal, brother.